You are listening to the Evolve Your Intimacy podcast with Dr. Stephanie, where it is my goal to educate, enlighten, and evolve your intimacy. You can find me at evolveyourintimacy.com to learn more about counseling, self-study courses, sex, and the retreats that we have to offer. This show contains discussions about relationships, intimacy, and sex, and is meant for those who are 18 years and older. Now, sit back, relax, listen up, and get ready to evolve your intimacy. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Evolve Your Intimacy with Dr. Stephanie. I have someone that I'm very excited to interview. We've been trying to do this interview now for over a year, but schedules have just been crap. But I was able to nail this man down. And the reason why we're doing this interview with this specific individual, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them, is because we need to talk about the lifelong addiction with sex and just feeling shame about sex and just inadequacies and embarrassment and all this stuff about sexual desires. And so I want you to stay tuned because we are going to talk about how we can overcome shame and stigma from our sexual pleasures. So stay tuned. Are you interested in learning more about the topics that we discuss on the show? Head over to ASN Lifestyle Magazine, where you can read all the articles that I publish about relationships, intimacy, and sex. When it comes to the lifestyle and the adult industry magazines, look no further than ASN Lifestyle Magazine. They are the natural go-to for everything lifestyle and adult content. Get your free digital issue today at asnlifestylemagazine.com. And if you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to ask Stephanie. You are listening to the Evolve Your Intimacy podcast with Dr. Stephanie, and I am Dr. Stephanie. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, today we have noted Hollywood publicist Dan Harari. He's the owner of the Ashbury PR agency in Beverly Hills, California, and he's an author of 2 books, Flirting with Fame and Carrots. He's a native of Queens Township, New Jersey, and has worked as a stage manager at the legendary Sunshine Inn Concert Hall in Ashbury Park in the early 70s. Now he gets to work with just all kinds. You've worked with Bruce Springsteen, Kiss, Fleetwood Mac. This man has done it all. And now he is an assistant at the Associate Film Institute, and he has an in-house PR position with the Playboy Channel, Columbia Pictures Television, 2 top Hollywood entertainment PR agencies, and now he has his own agency. This man has pretty much done it all. How are you, Dan?
Hey, this is great. We finally did this, Stephanie. It took a little while, but I'm very glad to be here. By the way, I have a third book. I have a third book. It came out in March. It's called After They Came. It's a science fiction novel about benevolent aliens who come to Earth to save mankind. And because of the success of my third book, I have become friends with many of the top UFO researchers in the world. And next week, I'm launching a new group in Hollywood called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And we have top Hollywood producers and top UFO researchers. And we're coming together for the first time to talk about movies and TV shows and documentaries. So my third book really it's literally out of this world. It's called After They Came, and it altered my life. I'm like the UFO guru now all of a sudden.
Wow. I love that. I accidentally became a sex MacGyver, and I have not went back. I don't know how I got that title, but it worked.
Sex MacGyver, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. I was told I can turn any tool sexy, so I'm going with it. So we're going to talk about that stigma and shame today. We're going to talk about your book, Carrots, and I also want to talk a little about UFOs because, come on, they just released that we have aliens, and I'm just waiting for some of them to come and visit and take me away. I'm ready to go to this other better planet that I'm sure they have to have. Anyway, I digress. Dan, I know that you had an unusual early childhood when it came to the opposite sex. Can you share some of those stories here?
Yeah, so my whole life has been very, very peculiar with girls and women. Starting at a very young age, I call it the curse. I call it the past life curse. And when I say that, I'm only half kidding because I'm only half kidding because anyone who reads my book Carrots, True Confessions of a Hollywood Sex Addict, you'll see the weird. Can I say shit? Can I say the word?
You can say what you can say. Shit, fuck, hell, damn, you got it.
Okay, good to know. I mean, weird shit has happened to me. I'll just give you childhood highlights. You know, when I was born, my mother had a nervous breakdown and was in a mental hospital for 2 months. Okay, so right off the bat, when I was born, the first woman in my life wasn't there. Right off the cuff. Okay. When I was 5 years old, I was playing with a little girl neighbor next door, and we were running around chasing her cats or something. And then she said, "Let's go in the bushes and take off our clothes." I'm 5 years old. I think she was 7. I'm like, okay, I'm 5 years old. We go in the bushes. Yeah. She takes off her clothes. I'm standing there shaking, literally shaking. She takes her clothes off. Her mother appears out of nowhere, like and parts the bushes like Moses parted the Red Sea, and sees her naked daughter and me, and she's screaming, the mother screaming at me, "You pervert, you little pervert, what's wrong with you?" I'm 5 years old. This girl took off her clothes, and I had no idea what was happening. So she grabbed me by the ear. She grabbed me by the ear and pulled me down the street, screaming, and then screamed at my mother that I was a little pervert.
You were naked?
No, the little girl was.
Okay, gotcha.
I had no idea. So this lady yelled at my mother, "Keep your little pervert son away from my daughter." I'm 5 years old.
Wow.
Okay, now we jump to third grade. I think you're 8 or 9, third grade.
Sure. Yeah, around that. Yeah.
My best friend and I were playing a game at recess called Chase the Girls. We were chasing these 2 twin girls around the blacktop. I was running after this one girl, and she turned around and she goes, Danny, you're never going to get me." Like we had to tag someone. She goes, "You're never going to catch me." And as she turned, she ran right into a fence hard and broke her adult tooth right here. She broke her tooth.
Oh my gosh.
She spit it out with blood, and she looked at me and she said, "Look what you did to me." I never touched her. I didn't push her. I didn't tag her. I didn't get her. And she goes, "Look what you did to me." There's countless stories. Here's a great one. This one still bothers me to this day. I'm 14. I had my very first boy-girl party. I'm 14 at my parents' house with some friends. And all the little boys and all the little girls paired off for 7 minutes in heaven.
7 minutes in heaven.
In my garage. So I was the only kid there that had a watch. So I had to time all the couples with the 7 minutes. As a result, I was the last boy to go to have my turn. And the prettiest girl there, her name was Bonnie. I'll never forget her. Really pretty. She and I were matched up, and I was like, oh, this is going to be the greatest moment of my life. We go into my garage. We start kissing maybe 20, 30 seconds. And I'm hearing music, and my heart's beating fast, and I'm thrilled because I'm finally kissing a girl. My best friend opens the door. He goes, "Danny, Bonnie's father's here. He came to pick her up." I go, "What? What?" Her father came an hour and a half early to pick her up. So she goes, "Oh my God, I have to go." So she ran out of the garage where we were kissing to her father. He was the only parent that came. No other parents came because the party was not over. And they left, and I never saw her again. They moved. I never saw her again. So those are just a few examples of my early weirdness with girls. It's just things. It's like an organic or supernatural disconnect, and I've had it my whole life.
Well, that started probably before childbirth, because what we're finding is our attachment begins in utero. And if your mother had a nervous breakdown right when you were born, you never got that mother-daughter or that mother-son bond. Your attachment style would probably is very insecure, or not now, but started out as very insecure. And so when Bonnie left you, that was another abandonment wound that hit you too.
Yes, absolutely. My mother, she's still alive. God bless her. She just turned 89. She was a classic narcissist until 4 years ago when they finally put her on the right medication. Now she's a sweetheart. But my whole life, she was an actress and a singer, and always had to be and a poet and an artist. She always had to be this. Always was the center of attention. Always had to be the belle of the ball. It was look at me, see me. And I have two younger brothers, Stephanie, and this is interesting. All three of us became sex addicts. How about that? That's interesting, right?
Well, not really. I mean, it's not interesting for me because from a psychological standpoint, out of control sexual behavior can stem from a parent being a narcissist, because you never feel good enough and you are always searching for that love from the opposite sex or the same sex, but just some sort of connection. And sometimes that sexual connection is the only way you can feel like you're worth something.
Very much true. That really is true. We're going to talk about anything here. So, and I'm not ashamed of anything. I still have phone sex every now and then. I've been doing phone sex since it was invented. And what I discovered when I do phone sex, and rarely, but once in a blue moon, is that I like to do like the mommy phone sex call. Like, mommy, I'm a bad boy. Mommy, I'm jerking off. Mommy, I'm thinking about you and your big titties, mommy, and your friends. I'm 67, man. This goes back to age 15.
Yeah, there's no shame in that.
My mother and father had all kinds of parties. My mother was a very attractive brunette. All her friends were blondes with blue eyes and big boobs, all of her friends.
Uh-huh.
And when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, I was the bartender. My dad would give me the drinks and I would serve them to my mother's friends. And then I'd go in the bathroom and jerk off because my mother's friends were so hot.
So you had the Oedipus complex.
It wasn't my mom. It wasn't thinking of my mom as I wanted to have sex with my mother.
Uh-huh.
It was I wanted to have my mother and or her friends watch me masturbate or know that I was a sexual being. That's what it was.
And that is so true. And that sexual being can translate into you just wanted your mother's attention and she didn't give that to you. And that sexual act provided some sort of relief of that. So talk to me about your sexual adolescence, because I know that there was some things that happened a little bit different than other teen boys usually experienced it. Can you tell us about how your sexual debut happened?
Yeah. So again, that whole era was very screwed up for numerous reasons. One is, like I said, my mother was a narcissist, and not that she was scary, but she was not a warm, hugging, embracing person. Mm-hmm. She was like, do your homework, do your chores, time for bed. Like, my father was the warm, sweet, fun guy parent. My mother was do this, do that, and if I got an A- or a B+, why'd you get a B+? Okay, so that's one train. Okay. When I was 12, my best friend was 13, guy friend. We were best friends for years. And we used to look at his father's Playboy magazines together in my attic. And we would look at them, and I'd get hard, and I'd have pre-cum coming out. And the truth is, definitely, no one ever told me anything ever about sex, ever. I knew absolutely nothing. We would look at the magazines, and I'd get hard, and I imagine he got hard too. Mm-hmm. And we would just look at them and like the boobs, this is the late 60s era of Playboy with the big boobs and the blonde hair. So one day after we were looking at the magazine, we went outside. My friend said, my mother's car was there and it was unlocked. And he said, lay down on the back seat of the car. I said, why? And he goes, I want you to be my girlfriend. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, just lay down. I want you to be my girlfriend. I'm like, okay. So I laid on the back seat. He got on top of me, and we both had our clothes on. Mm-hmm. And he put his arm around me, and he started humping. He was humping his crotch against my crotch. And I was looking like, what are you doing? I'm like, what, right? This is my best friend from the age of 8. I'm like, what is happening? What are you doing? But I'm getting hard. He's getting hard. And we both came. We both climaxed in our jeans, right? So then we get out of the car. He goes, thanks for the sex. I'll see you later. He walked home. I look at my jeans. I have a big stain in my jeans. Mm-hmm. Stephanie, I thought I peed in my pants. I had no idea what had just had, no clue whatsoever.
No idea that it was ejaculation.
I didn't know a penis could get hard. I didn't know stuff came out. I didn't know what the white stuff was called. All I knew was that I was embarrassed and ashamed. I went in the house. I remember I hid my underwear behind a closet so my mother wouldn't see that there was wet underwear.
So how old were you? You said 12. What year was this?
12. I was 12 and a half. It was the very start of 1969.
Okay.
From then, once I knew the penis could do that magic trick, is when I started masturbating and having wet dreams. Mm-hmm. And started stealing Playboy magazines. I stole Playboy magazines from the drugstore near school for years. I'd ride my bike to the drugstore with a jacket. I'd put the magazine, under my arm with the jacket, and I would drive it home. And the magazines, those girls, to me, that was sex. And I didn't know the word masturbation. I didn't know that word. I didn't know orgasm, cum, sperm. I didn't know anything. This is before the internet. This is before AIDS and condoms. My parents never spoke to me about sex, ever.
And and that was in 1969. But we have people today in 2023 who still do not talk to their children about this. They expect the school system to do it, and the schools aren't educating them.
I think I had health class in 8th grade, which would have been when I was 14. And I think they showed like a drawing. This is a sperm cell, and this is drawing like a cartoon of an egg, and the sperm cell swims to the egg. I'm like, what the fuck is what? How does the sperm cell get to the egg? No one ever told me. My parents never did. Years later, I said to my mother, I said, how come you and Dad never told me about sex? She goes, your father said he told you, but you turned bright red and you ran out of the house.
And I can hear your mother's Jersey accent saying that too.
Yeah. Your father told me he told you about sex. That's my mother.
Well, according to your book, Carrots, you were very popular in high school, but you really never had a girlfriend. And I'm thinking, can we connect that to Bonnie and her leaving?
Okay, so that goes to I call it the 2 train tracks. All right, we're going to talk about 2 parallel train tracks, right? If there's 2 parallel train tracks, they're never going to meet because they're parallel, right? They'll never meet. Sure. Okay. For me, one of those tracks was real life, everything about real life, and the other was fantasy, sex, girls in magazines jerking off. That was they were unrelated. I was a straight A student. I had millions of friends. I was at the top of every class. I was a drummer in high school.
I noticed a drum set behind you. Just saying, there's a drum set behind you. So that started in high school.
I started when I was 12. I started playing. Okay. Actually, I started studying drums when I was 10, when the Monkees came on TV. Okay. But so I was in rock bands. I had long hair. My bands were popular, always surrounded by girls. In retrospect, there were a number of girls who liked me and were flirty with me. Okay, Stephanie, here's the problem. One, the narcissistic mother, which for me and my 2 brothers, it created a like a two magnets that repel.
Yes.
For me and my mother, like even now, when I saw her last week for her birthday, when I hug her, even now I cringe. And she's a perfectly fine little old lady now. But when I hug her, I cringe because I never felt a love. I never did.
Yeah.
I never felt that. That's number one. Number two was my friend molested me when I was 12. The Bonnie story. The mother calling me a pervert when I was 5. The girl from 3rd grade whose tooth got broken. There was another time in 3rd grade, I was dancing with a little girl, 3rd grade, in gym class. We were dancing, square dancing, and the teacher grabbed me by the shirt and started screaming at me. He goes, "Why are you being so rough with that little girl? I'm going to beat the crap out of you. I'm going to take you back in the woodshed and beat the crap out of you." I was dancing with a little girl. I was 8 or 9 years old. And he put me in the front of the room and embarrassed me. The little girl I was dancing with started crying. So a series of odd traumas, let's call them, the narcissistic mother. And here's the kicker. Here's the best one. I had clinical depression, undiagnosed, from age 15 to age 40. 25 years I was clinically depressed. I did not have Prozac or any medication. When I was 40 and found a doctor and told him my story, he goes, "I can't believe what you've accomplished being clinically depressed all those years." He goes, "You are astounding what you've done without medication." He said, "You're like a diabetic who never had insulin and survived." That's what he told me.
Yeah.
So at age 40, I got Prozac and my entire life changed for the better. That was 27 years ago.
Let's just remind everyone that this is Evolve Your Intimacy, and I am Dr. Stephanie from Evolve Your Intimacy. We are having an amazing discussion, but we need to take a quick break, so stay right there and we'll be right back. Do you want to be on a ship with over 6,000 wild and naked friends? Drop an anchor in exotic countries? Explore all the sexiness the world has to offer? Come join me, Dr. Stephanie, on the next Bliss Cruise and allow me to personally guide you to better sex in my play shops, workshops, and private couples sessions. I invite you to come and let your wild and sexy desires become a reality on the next Bliss Cruise. To learn where we are sailing next, visit evolveyourintimacy.com/cruises. I can't wait to see you there. You are listening to the Evolve Your Intimacy podcast with Dr. Stephanie, and I am Dr. Stephanie. Now, let's get back to the show. I have a question. Put a pin in that. You said that your best friend molested you. You consider that molestation?
I've been in therapy on and off for the last 30 years. I would say half of the therapists said I was molested. And I would say half of them said it was normal childhood exploration. Why I say I lean toward molesting is because I didn't know what he was going to do. It wasn't discussed. It wasn't mutual. It was, I was his hump toy. It was like if he was humping a pillow or something. I was his hump. Now I think he had an older brother, and I think his older brother used to molest him. I'm just guessing, but I have a feeling that his brother molested him, and then my friend did it to me. And I think, Stephanie, there's another time I slept over at my friend's house. And I would have to be hypnotized, but I think maybe he put his penis in my ass crack and humped like a hot dog in a bun. And humped my ass and came on my back. Also when I was 12. I think that happened. It's a blank spot in my brain. I remember sleeping over his house once, and I remember when I walked home the next morning, I felt weird. So I do believe that he molested me twice. And from there, it's when I started masturbating. And I masturbated, up to 8 times a day. Once I started, It was overwhelming. I didn't have serotonin in my brain. My doctor said, of course you masturbate. You had no serotonin.
Absolutely. So, and the reason why I asked that is because I work with so many different individuals and I get mixed stories. So you call it molestation. And then I have another client who kind of experiences some of the same things, but that he doesn't consider it molestation. He considered it education. And so the different views on it, and it's your personal view. There's no right or wrong way to view it. I can't say as a therapist, yes, it was molestation or no, it wasn't, because it's what you use and what you feel. If you like my person, or that's just one in particular client, but even another client that was molested as a young person still feels a lot of fondness towards that person because they feel like they were taught and prepared sexually. So it's just, it's really interesting. And I say all this for our viewers. I say all this for our listeners. Because if you're listening and you think, well, was I molested? And you're having that, I guess, that indecisiveness. If you don't feel like you were molested, that's okay too. It could be a good experience and it could have been inappropriate. Absolutely. But it could have been a good experience for you and it doesn't have to be perceived as a negative. But in your instance, I'm wondering if that was how your best friend showed you love.
I would have preferred, here's honestly, if he had said, my brother showed me how to do something called jerking off. Mm-hmm. And do you want to see? Yeah. And then if he did that and then showed me how to do that and we did that like a circle jerk kind of, if we had done that while looking at them, I still jerk off to Playboy magazines to this day. Still. Yeah. My joke is I've come on so many Playboy magazine pages I could be the father of Scandinavia.
The father of Scandinavia. I love it.
So, you know what I mean? If he had shared as a friend, hey, sure. I know this trick I can do with my penis. Want to see? Sure. And then, okay, he used me as I believe his brother, and I'm guessing, but I think his brother did it to him. So it wasn't reciprocal. He didn't ask me. Mm-hmm. There was no consent. He was older than me. He was stronger than me. And after that, those two, I'm pretty sure it was twice. After that, I just felt incredible shame about masturbating. I used to wake up in the middle of the night when I was from 13 to 18, in the middle of the night with my parents sleeping and my brother sleeping. And I'd go around the house and, fucking the couch in the living room, mm-hmm. fucking furniture, jerking off in every room and every way I could think of. In the middle of the night, always shaking and trembling, thinking if my mother or father caught me, I honestly think I would have died of embarrassment. Mm-hmm. I would have had like a heart attack. I would have been so overwhelmingly, I would have fainted. I know I would have fainted. So I was just compelled by this new act of pleasure, but I didn't understand it. And I felt incredible shame and guilt about it all those years.
And what it was doing for you was producing that chemical that your brain didn't produce on its own. And there should be no shame or stigma attached to it, but no one taught you otherwise.
My mother said, Danny, whatever you're doing in your bedroom, all your little friends are doing it too. That's the only reference I ever got. And I was probably 14 and I was like, how could she know what I do in my room? How could she's a girl, you know what I mean? Now getting back to the two tracks. So popular straight A's, rock bands, friends, right? There were girls, Stephanie, that were flirting with me, essentially throwing themselves at me. But they were beautiful and they had big tits and they were attractive. And I'm like, there was this one girl named Cheryl, my senior year of college, throwing herself at me. And I'm thinking to myself, she can't possibly like me. I'm a loser. I'm a total loser. I'm a virgin. She's way too pretty. Her tits are way too big. I'll just be her friend. And then when she drops me off tonight when I go home, I'll jerk off to my magazines. Mm-hmm. I had a complete, in my brain, a disconnect. It was a disconnect. It's the two parallel trains. There were jerk-off fantasy girls. And then on TV in those days was Gilligan's Island with Ginger and Mary.
Ginger. And then Daisy Dukes.
That was a little later. There was, I'll tell you my masturbating shows was Gilligan's Island. I Dream of Jeannie, of course. And Dean Martin used to have a show, the Dean Martin Show, and he had the Dingaling sisters, these four beautiful blondes with hot pants.
I've never heard of them. I'm going to have to Google these.
Google Dean Martin Dingaling sisters.
Okay.
And they would dance, and hot pants, man, hot pants made me like explode in my pants. I mean, when hot pants happened and the girls at school were wearing hot pants, my heart would just, from a distance, my heart would beat fast, my hands would get sweaty. It was overwhelming. The sexuality power was overwhelming. So I masturbate. My sex life revolved around my secret hiding place in my room. Mm-hmm. Now, what happened was 16, 17, all my guy friends are starting to get laid now. Mm-hmm. And that's when I should have, and I had certainly had opportunities, but I was stuck I put girls in the friend zone. They didn't put me, I put them in the friend zone. So I could jerk off, because jerking off, I could control it. I could do it as I pleased. It was a turn on. I didn't have to take a girl out to lobster dinner with money I didn't have, So it was a disconnect that stayed with me up until I met my wife.
Now, you fell in love in college.
I fell in infatuation in college.
Okay. My
freshman year of college, I'd never even slept away from home ever. So I'm 18, I had really long hair, I was in bands and stuff, and now I'm in college studying pre-med, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why am I here? What am I doing? I'm a drummer. I went to my college because my father went there. And the first day I was at college, there was a girl, Stephanie, with really, really long red hair. And I saw her the first night of school at a dance. Now, she was not beautiful. She was attractive. She was not beautiful. But her hair was down to her waist. And the first second I ever saw her, I went into like a fantasy dream state that I knew. And my joke was that I knew her in a past life. I felt that I knew her from a past life. I was obsessed with her for a year. I never spoke to her ever once.
Oh, okay.
I was unable to, I would stare at her. She'd look at me she'd go come over, talk to me. And my hands would shake and tremble with my tray at the cafeteria. And I'd turn and I'd sit somewhere else. And all my friends were like, why don't you go talk? That my friends would talk to her and say, our friend Danny's in love with you. She goes, yeah, I know. How come he doesn't come talk to me? I couldn't do it. So that's where the disconnect, the two parallel, that's where it got really, really bad. Mm. In fact, I was suicidal that year.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. How were you able to overcome that?
Okay. So by coincidence, all through high school, I had the longest hair. I was in drummer in bands. I worked at the Sunshine Inn, surrounded by every rock band you could think of. I never got high in all those years. I never smoked pot ever once, because to me, another thing I messed myself up with. My mother smoked cigarettes, and my father and I hated it so much. We detested that. So when I saw people smoking pot, in my dopey brain, because I wasn't a very mature person, I was like, smoking pot, smoking cigarettes. I'm never going to smoke that shit. That's so stupid. I'm never going to smoke. I'm never going to smoke. Halfway through my freshman year of college, I had the longest hair in all of college. And people were like, you think you're a hippie? You never even got high. And I'm like, I'll tell you what, I'll show you. I'm going to smoke pot once. I'm going to hate it. And then I'm going to tell you, I told you so. I smoked it once. I got high. I'm like, oh my God, this is the best stuff ever.
This is the best stuff ever.
Why have I not been doing this for the last 5 years? So to answer your question, marijuana, that's when I discovered marijuana. Just when I was suicidal is when marijuana, I would say marijuana saved me at that point.
I can say marijuana has saved a lot of people. When it comes to depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations, rejection, and I know that there's so much hate and stigma around THC marijuana, but man, it has such good benefits when used appropriately.
I smoked for so I was 18 and a half. I met my wife when I was 25. She did not smoke or drink. So from 18 to 25, 7 years, I smoked. And again, I had the serotonin. My doctor said, you have like no serotonin.
Yeah.
So between pot and still masturbating, and then, hookers and phone sex and other things came along as well. But between coming and pot is how I coped until the age of 40, when I finally got my Prozac. And when I got Prozac at 40, I opened $1 million business and had girlfriends coming out the house all at the same time. So Prozac for 40, my life changed overnight.
I completely agree with that. The reason why, I'm just going to get a little bit technical. The reason why you had zero or very little serotonin production is because when you were a child, did you live in constant state of fear? Like you had to negotiate your behavior based off of everybody else's behavior around you so you wouldn't get in trouble or you wouldn't get things taken away from you?
No. My mother, her sister, my grandmother, my aunt, my brother, and my nephew and my daughter, we all have clinical depression.
Yes.
It is a biological trait from my mother's family. That I know. Yeah. That is a true statement. On my father's side was OCD and Asperger's. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, there are times though when we have, and this is just for anybody listening, if you don't know why or you don't have a history of depression in your family, depression the lack of serotonin can be produced from childhood trauma because your brain doesn't significantly form that ability to produce it. So it's always under distress and then it just never forms. So
I believe you. I don't think that's my case. Now here, this is interesting. From the age of 12 till today, I have a lifelong best friend from the age of 12, a different friend, not the one that molested me, different friend.
Yeah.
Today he owns a successful nightclub in New York, and he helped discover Lady Gaga. Okay.
Oh wow.
His mother, when we were growing up, I would be at his house, he would be at my house every day for years and years and years. We were like brothers for years. Mm-hmm. He was the guitarist in the band, I was the drummer. My mother, I told you, the narcissist, larger than life, has to be spotlighted. His mother was the sweetest, kindest, gentlest, soft-spoken woman ever. When we turned 16, 17, he fell in love, started having sex, and he's had more sex probably than Hugh Hefner. Because his relationship with his mother was warm and caring and loving. In fact, I saw her last week. She just turned 92. She lives in New Jersey. Aww. She's like my aunt. She was warm and loving, and he never had a problem crossing the friendship boundary with girls to become sexual. Because of my thing with my mother was like scary. My mother was a frightening person. I was unable to negotiate. Like when he was getting laid, my best friend in the world was getting laid. I would drive him and his girlfriend to have sex and sit in the car and wait for them and go, why him and not me? And the reason was I couldn't negotiate that because of the distance I felt with my mother. So I don't blame my mother. Her father molested her whole teenage life. It's not her fault, but it's just a circumstance that I inherited.
Let's just remind everyone that this is Evolve Your Intimacy, and I am Dr. Stephanie from Evolve Your Intimacy. We are having an amazing discussion, but we need to take a quick break, so stay right there and we'll be right back. Not quite ready for sex therapy, but you still have questions about sex, relationships, and intimacy? Join me on the first Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on SDC.com for a free question and answer session where I answer all of your questions about your specific intimacy needs. If you're not part of the SDC community, no worries, we've got your back. Go to our website, evolveyourintimacy.com, click on the Fun tab, go to the dating sites, and join SDC for free. I look forward to seeing you and your partner at the next live question and answer with Dr. Stephanie on SDC.com. You are listening to the Evolve Your Intimacy podcast with Dr. Stephanie, and I am Dr. Stephanie. Now, let's get back to the show. You had such a fear of interacting with women, but then you got married. How did that work? How did that happen?
I moved to California when I was 24. And when I came here, I was I went to college in New Jersey for a year, and then I went to Boston University, graduated from there. And then I worked in the Jersey Shore. Then I worked in Manhattan. I was very unhappy on the East Coast. I just wasn't a happy person. My father's dream in life was to live in Los Angeles. So when I turned 24, he goes, why don't you go move to LA? I'm like, okay. All right. I mean, I didn't even know where LA was. I had to look on a map. I actually got to get a map of the United States to see I didn't know where LA was. I came out here. I had $1,000. I had a friend in Venice Beach. She let me sleep on her couch. But once I came out to California at 24, no job, no money, no car, no girlfriend, no nothing, no connection. I was uplifted, Stephanie. It was like it was a natural high. I felt a natural high. My depression subsided. Wow. It didn't go away, but it subsided dramatically because I grew up in snow and blizzards and hurricanes, and now I'm in LA with bikini girls everywhere. I lived on Venice Beach, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I used to write poetry. I had no money. I'd read poetry, smoke pot, get a pizza slice, and I was never happier in my life. So I got uplifted, and then I met my wife. I was here a year when I met my wife.
Okay. And
I was in a different headspace when I was 25.
So how did that curve ever your out of control sexual behavior?
That's a very, very good question. I was 25. She was 20. We met at New Year's Eve at a nightclub. We fell in love right away. We got engaged very quickly. I got her pregnant by accident. We had an abortion. Then she became a Jesus freak, and we broke up for a while. Then we got back together. Then we got married. Once we got married, and this is another part of Carrot, Stephanie.
Yes.
The night of my wedding, this is in the book. The night of my wedding, my first night of my honeymoon, my wife developed Epstein-Barr syndrome, and she was sick in bed for the next 6 months. I did not have sex on my honeymoon. How's that sound?
I know.
How's that?
That's terrible.
Talk about the Carrot's curse. Okay, that was a big one. And I'm working at the Playboy channel at the time. I was the first publicist. So during the day, and this is true, during the day I was with the prettiest girls in America, quite often naked, because I did the photo shoot. I did a lot of photo shoots with those girls. And then I'd go home to my wife, sick in bed with an IV in a hospital bed, and her mother and her grandmother are feeding her soup. So all day I'm with beautiful, gorgeous, naked girls who are flirting with me. And I just gotten married. And then at night I'm with a very ill woman. So we had a little closet down in the garage. I used to go jerk off in the closet when I took down the trash because there was no sex for me happening.
So can you tell us a little bit about what that disease is?
This was in 1984. It was Epstein-Barr syndrome. Now it's called chronic fatigue syndrome. It was just getting discovered then. Primarily women 33 to 53 were just getting like lymph node stuff and sore throats and headaches and incredibly tired. Mm-hmm. And we found a special doctor, my wife and I took her, and the doctor said, there's a new thing called chronic fatigue syndrome. And he looked at my wife, Kim. He goes, Kim, you could be the poster child for chronic fatigue syndrome.
Oh man.
Today it's called chronic fatigue. Then it was called Epstein-Barr. So she was very ill for months. Finally, it subsided, and then we had several good years together. We made 2 children. After we had the 2 children, our sexuality was just gone. It was gone. She gained a lot of weight, and I'm an asshole. I'm not George Clooney, but when she gained a lot of weight, I was not attracted to her. So I would jerk off in the closet in the garage. I never cheated on her, but I did not want to be with her anymore. And when my daughter was 2 and my son was 4, she said, Dan, you don't love me anymore. You need to be with women. You need to have sex. She goes, you didn't have much sex before you met me.
Yeah.
She goes, let's get divorced. You can see the kids whenever you want. She goes, you need to have sex. And Stephanie, I cried. I said, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Sobbing, crying. I said, thank you. And I hugged her. I said, thank you. She gave me the key to the jail cell.
And so did you go out and just have sex so much?
Well, that was I was divorced at 36. From 36 to 56 is when I became a real sex addict. Again, that's in the book. Mm-hmm. Sex addict for me was dating real women and having sex with real women. Hookers, prostitutes, call girls, whatever you want to call them, at my house or at hotels. Phone sex, of course. Jerking off to porn, or in those days was VHS videotapes. Mm-hmm. Now of course everything's digital. I had to masturbate at least once or twice every single day. Even when I was having sex with girlfriends and having sex with hookers, I still had to masturbate. So it was a continuous collage of orgasms. Mm. But on the weekends, I had my kids, and they were 2 and 4. So weekends was not jerk-off time for daddy. Weekends was fun time with the daddy going to the park and the zoo. Mm-hmm. So I had to schedule my sex addiction around my children.
Wow.
And I spent hundreds of thousands. I was making real money then. Fortunately, I was making a lot of money then. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on call girls. Beautiful, gorgeous. The best sex I ever had was with beautiful call girls. They looked like from Victoria's Secret, wearing lingerie and fulfilling my fantasies. But there's the thing. They go home, you wake up the next morning, it's like being hungry. You can have a huge meal and a pizza, feel full, feel great, and the next morning you're hungry again. And if you don't want to spend another $600 the next day on another hooker.
Yeah.
So that it was literally 20 years, 36 to 56 is when it was my hardcore period.
You didn't have the language to call it sex addiction or out of control sexual behavior. And just for clarification, there is no empirical evidence, psychological evidence for sex addiction. There is empirical evidence for out of control sexual behavior, just kind of a side note. But you said that you didn't have that language. So where did that come from for you?
That's an excellent question. When along those 36 to 56, and I was spending thousands of dollars a month on call girls, I spoke to my sister-in-law one night on the phone, and I made a joke. I said something like, God, you should have seen the hooker I was with last night. She was so beautiful. She only cost me $1,200, whatever, $1,500. And my sister-in-law said, Dan, you're a sex addict. She goes, you need therapy. And I'm like, that's the first time I ever heard that expression, believe it or not. Even though I was a raging sex, whatever
you want to call yourself.
I wasn't familiar with that terminology. So I found around 56, I found a sex therapist. Her name was Meredith. She worked for a sex clinic here in LA. And I went in, she goes, why are you here? I go, well, I'm not sure. My sister-in-law thinks I should come in and talk to you. She goes, why? Well, I've been spending, tens of thousands of dollars, and I need to come every few hours, and hookers and girlfriends and phone sex and porn and this and that. And she just looked at me shaking her head. She goes, you are a raging sex addict. I go, and I said, Stephanie, really? I am? And I didn't know.
Well, that's a badge of honor for you.
I had no idea. It was a light bulb, really. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. I joined SAA. So here's when we come to the calming of the waters.
Yes.
I joined Sex Addicts Anonymous. The first time I went to a meeting, I was shaking. It was like 30 men and one woman, one very brave woman. I was a black woman. I was so proud of her. And everyone's talking about their stuff, and I'm shaking, literally shaking. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, there's people in the world like me. I didn't know they exist. I didn't know they existed. So everyone went around there, and then they said, "Are there any new people here? Raise your hand." So I raised my hand, and they said, "Would you like to share?" And I'm like, "Don't say anything. Don't say anything. You're too shy. You're gonna puke. You're gonna puke." And the other was like, "Go for it. Go for it. Just what do you have to lose?"
Sure.
So I stood up and I shared in like 4 minutes. I told you everything I've just said in the last 50 minutes.
Yeah.
The childhood and the mother and the friend molesting me and my sick wife and the Playboy and the call girls and the tens of thousands. And at the end, people applauded and they go, "Wow, that was the best share we've ever heard."
Yes.
People came up to me at the end and hugged me. They go, "Dan, that was the best share." Oh, really? So I remember I drove home that night, Stephanie. I was elated. I felt like a huge boulder was off my shoulder. I had never told a man in the world that I jerked off. Not one man, not even a friend. Never, ever. Not my brothers, no one had I ever said those words to. And now there's a room of strangers who are hugging me. And I'm like, wow, this is remarkable. So,
that is a beautiful experience.
So that helped to calm the waters. Also, other things happened. My daughter moved back in with me from college. My business took a turn in 2008 from the economy, so I wasn't making $500,000 a year anymore. I didn't have tons of money for call girls anymore. The SAA meetings, and a very big thing is that my testosterone level dropped. I have low T now. I have low T.
And you're on medication for your serotonin production.
I've been on Prozac for 27 years, which also, I mean, for me to get a good hard on now, I'll tell you what I have to do. I have to get drunk. I have to take a few Viagra, and I have to not take I call them my pee-pee pills. I have pills so I can make pee-pee. It's called, and you may have heard of this. Do you know what retro ejaculation, have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
So retro ejaculate, if I take my pee-pee pills every day and jerk off that night, nothing will come out. The semen goes backwards. And that's it's like sneezing. You have to sneeze really hard, but when you sneeze, it's like it's very disappointing. So for me to come, I have to not take my pee-pee pills for 2 days, be drunk and take Viagra, and then do like an hour, 2 hours of phone sex. And then I can get hard after a great deal of effort. I can get hard. I can come. It's for me to come now. It's like a Broadway play. It's like a whole big production.
It's a whole production.
It's not quick, simple, but like in the old days. So that's why. So I'm 67. So in the last 11 years, the whole sexuality thing for me has tremendously dropped off the map.
So what advice do you have for those struggling with this?
Find a sex therapist, not just because I've been with regular therapists and I've shared my stuff with them. Very nice, accomplished people, always women, because I'm too embarrassed to talk to them. And they say, Dan, this is over my head. You need someone who specializes in sexual behaviors. So find a therapist that, like you, who is well aware of sexual behaviors. A, B, they don't get embarrassed or ashamed. I had early on, Stephanie, I had some therapists, and I would tell them some of my dirty secrets, and their faces would turn red, and they'd look at the ground. They were embarrassed, and I'm thinking, I'm embarrassed. You're my therapist. You shouldn't be embarrassed. Why are you embarrassed, right? So I had to fire those people. So find a therapist that you are a match with. Check out SAA meetings. I think they're probably on Zoom and in person.
They are. They're everywhere.
And the best advice is be brave and kick your own ass. When you're in one of those meetings, be brave, kick your own ass, stand up and say, I would like to share. I was a nervous wreck before I shared, and after I shared, I think I cried on the way home. I can understand that. It was such a huge burden to share a lifetime of dirty sex secrets with others. It helps to just lift the guilt and the shame and dissipate it. So that's my advice.
That is such great advice. And I appreciate you sharing your story, because you had all that shame and guilt and you never wanted to share it. You never had the opportunity to. But now we have books that you've written about it and you're sharing your story. And do you feel like sharing your story with the world has really helped?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's helped me. It's helped me to purge it. I'm a writer. As I said, I have 3 books now. I have 2 more books coming out next May. So in next May, I will have published 5 books, all different subjects. My Carrots book is the sex addiction book. Yeah. It helped me, Stephanie. It's like when I shared at SAA. Now I shared a book that's on Amazon that could be bought in any country in the world. A couple of problems. A, I haven't sold many copies. B, I've specifically told my friends and relatives not to read it because they don't, even my daughter, I told her, you are not to read this book. It's not for people who know me because they would be embarrassed. It's for people who don't know me and would like to see a journey like I just described. Yeah. But my other books I give out as gifts to my friends and my relatives. That book, I can't give it to friends and relatives. Like a good female friend, I said, would you like a copy? She goes, Dan, I love you as a friend. She goes, I don't need to know what you've been doing in your bedroom all these years. She goes, I would rather not know. Yeah. So it helped me purge it. I don't feel guilt or shame. I just talked to you about jerking off for an hour. I mean, yeah. In the old days, Stephanie, if I saw you, I'd be shaking. I'd say, what am I going to say? Not even close. It doesn't bother me. I've embraced who I am, and I'm able to share.
I love that, and I appreciate you for being able to do that.
I appreciate you gave me the forum to talk to you.
Yeah. So tell everybody where they can get your book and where they can learn more about you.
All right. So I spent a lot of money on that cover.
That looks great.
It's a cartoon of me chasing a beautiful girl, and it's a carrot on a stick, right?
Yeah.
So it's called Carrots, True Confessions of a Hollywood Sex Addict. Amazon is the way to go. It's in paperback or an ebook, and it's probably the most brutally honest sexual confession book you'll ever read. Stephanie, you read it.
I did read it, and it's very honest, and it's comical too. You don't hold back, and you have this element in it where you're not, I don't want to say making fun of yourself, but you're not taking it as serious. Like it's a hard topic, but you present it in a very light and I don't want to say readable, but it's a readable way. You're not reading it going, oh shit, this is terrible. You're reading it going, okay, well, that must have been done.
Well, I was a stand-up comedian for years. I've always been the class clown. I thought if I'm going to write about my sexuality, I got to put warts and all, and I got to make it funny. Yeah. Like years ago, I represented a super gorgeous, famous supermodel. We ended up sleeping in bed together in Vegas. One night we slept in the same bed. And I was like, I'd known her for a year, and I was like in love with her. And I'm like, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And we were both drunk, middle of the night. And I'm like, if I don't make a move on this supermodel, I'll never forgive myself. And the other part is like, she's your friend, leave her alone, don't touch her. So like a schmuck, I just rolled over on top of her and I tried to kiss her. And she turned away and I rolled back over and I said, okay, good night. And then the next morning I said, Amber, I guess now I can tell all my friends I slept with a supermodel. She goes, yeah, you can. What I should have done And the truth is, I was in love with her. Had I said, Amber, I need to tell you I'm in love with you. And because her whole thing, she was a love addict. And she probably would have said, I love you too. And it would have been different because I'm a putz and did something really retarded. And I just rolled over on top of her. I regret that. I apologized years later. But that's pretty funny. I mean, if you look at pictures of her, one of the most beautiful women who ever lived on the earth ever. And, you know, I slept with a supermodel, and it's a funny story now. So at least I got a chapter in my book out of that story.
Man, I've got a few chapters I could write of a few books too.
Well, if you do a book, let me know. I would help you. I would love to read it and help you edit or something.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking your time and sharing your story with us. And do you have a website people can go to?
Yes. Dan Harari, author. Dan, D-A-N, Harari, H-A-R-A-R-Y, author, A-U-T-H-O-R, all together. DanHarariAuthor.com. Everything about my books is up there. Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And I want to have you on again, and I want to talk about this UFOs. Okay. All right. And again, I'd love to do another show with you. I really would. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in and listening. Again, thank you, Dan Harari. I love how you say Ferrari with an H. Right. Rhymes with Ferrari. That's how I remember it. Dan Harari. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. You'll send me a link for this, right? I will. I will send you all of that. Yep. Let's do another one, okay? Invite me. We will. I will. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to listen to my show. I am Dr. Stephanie with Evolve Your Intimacy. And remember, you are not in this alone, and we are definitely here to help. You can learn more about all the amazing things that we do at evolveyourintimacy.com. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, you will receive free resources monthly to help you evolve your intimacy. Thank you again, and have a great night.